Fossils of about 800 types of dinosaurs have been found so far, although nearly 2,000 are thought to have existed altogether. Some walked on 2 feet, some on 4. Some ate plants, some ate animals, some ate both. Among the first known dinosaurs were the prosauropods. These were plant eaters that could grow up to 10 meters long, with small heads and long necks. They usually walked on all fours, but sometimes climbed onto 2 legs when reaching to nibble at the top of a tree. Gideon and Mary Ann Mantle were amateur fossil hunters who lived in Lewes, England. In 1822, the Mantles found several very large fossilized teeth in a forest near their home. They worked out that these teeth belonged to an animal about 18 meters long. That's nearly as long as 2 double-decker buses. After years of argument, scientists agreed about the Mantle's teeth. Well, not theirs, but the one they found. They decided they belonged to a new type of creature that had never been known before. They called it the iguanodon because they thought it would have looked something like a very large version of a modern iguana. Later, fossils showed it didn't look quite like that and wasn't much more than half as big as they thought either. The Mantle's discovery made people realize for the first time that the Earth was once home to huge, now extinct monsters. They were named dinosaurs, which means terrible lizards. Dinosaurs lived from about 245 million years ago to about 65 million years ago. They spanned 3 great geological periods called the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. On our 24-hour clock of all Earth history, they lived between 10:43 p.m. and 11:39 p.m. Some of the biggest dinosaurs were the sauropods, and one of the biggest of them was Argentinosaurus. This huge, heavy beast walked on all 4 legs. It could grow up to 30 meters long, and it may have weighed up to 70 tons, probably making it the heaviest animal ever on Earth. Its survival strategy was simple. It grew so large that few other creatures were big enough or strong enough to kill it. Other dinosaurs were fast. Ornithomimus may have been the speediest dinosaur of all. By studying footprints it left in mud, some scientists reckon it could run as fast as Olympic champion Usain Bolt. Its name means bird-like because Othniel Charles Marsh, the paleontologist who named it, noticed how much its claws looked like a bird's, and that was in 1890. He didn't have any idea that over 100 years later, other paleontologists would find fossils that show Ornithomimus also had feathers. Still, other dinosaurs had unusual built-in tools. Iguanodon was one of those. Its thumb was shaped like a terrifying dagger. Perhaps it used its thumb to defend itself, standing upright on its hind legs to fend off attackers. But some scientists think Iguanodon would have just run from predators and used its thumb spike for spearing food. Of course, the dinosaur with the strongest bite is the most famous dinosaur of all, the Tyrannosaurus rex, or T-Rex for short. It lived in what is now western North America. T-Rex walked on 2 legs and had a massive skull balanced by a long, heavy tail. Each of its hands had just 2 fingers, and its upper arms were quite short compared with its massive legs and tail. At around 12 meters long and weighing more than a modern elephant, this was one big carnivore. It dined on dead carcasses or live prey, possibly both. The most complete T-Rex skeleton was found by fossil hunter Sue Hendrickson in August 1990. This famous fossil was named Sue after its discoverer. Sue is 12.3 meters long from nose to tail. Not all dinosaurs were big or fast or strong. One of the smallest, Microraptor, was a four-winged dinosaur the size of a crow. It couldn't fly, but probably glided from tree to tree looking for food. In 1861, Christian Erich Hermann von Meyer, a German fossil hunter, announced the discovery of what he claimed was the first ever bird. He called it Archaeopteryx. It was the same size as a modern magpie and was definitely bird-like. Its feathers were arranged in much the same way as a modern bird's. It even had bird-like claws on its legs and a wishbone. Von Meyer's fossil dated back some 150 million years, which means it lived at about the same time as the long-necked prosauropods, who were munching the tops of trees. For years, experts were baffled as to which creature birds descended from, and how had they learned to fly? Where did their feathers come from? Knowing about just one prehistoric bird wasn't enough to understand what happened. Then, in 1996, Chinese scientists announced the fossil hunter Li Yumin had found a fossil that showed some dinosaurs had feathers. Sinosauropus caused a sensation. This was a 1.5 meter long, two-legged creature with the jaws and flattened teeth of meat-eating dinosaurs. It had clawed fingers, and its legs showed it must have been a fast runner. The puzzle of where birds came from had at last been solved. Feathers first appeared on some dinosaurs. They probably helped keep their bodies warm. Then later, some feathers evolved into the kind that helps birds fly. Many scientists think all theropods, smart, fast dinosaurs, including Velociraptor and T-Rex, had feathers, especially when they were young. So what's the difference between birds and dinosaurs? Well, not much. Actually, dinosaurs are alive and well in the world we live in today. But don't panic. Only the kind that could fly are still alive. It's just that we call them birds. While dinosaurs ruled the land, two other types of animals dominated the ocean and skies. Giant sharks, underwater crocodile ancestors, and nightmarish long-necked marine reptiles prowled the seas, gobbling up squid and fish. And in the skies, flying reptiles called pterosaurs swooped and glided, including giant Quetzalcoatlus with a wingspan of 12 meters. That's as wide as a small airplane. Dinosaur times were pretty exciting, but for a long time they were missing one thing we now take for granted. Flowering plants are by far the most successful plants alive today. But for about 330 million years, none of the plants in the world had flowers. The oldest flower fossils date back to about 140 million years ago. This was during the Cretaceous period, when dinosaurs were at the height of their power. Since then, flowering plants have made a massive impact on life on Earth. In fact, more than 75% of all our food comes from flowering plants and the animals that eat them. Flowers are brilliant at helping plants reproduce more easily. To talk about how we need to get back to between 1 and 2 billion years ago, at the time a new form of reproduction started in the oceans. It is called sexual reproduction. It works by combining genetic information, called DNA, from the cells of two parents, so that the baby has a combination of the parents' genes. That way, the baby is different from either of its parents. It's a great way of making sure all members of a species are different from each other. In fact, it works so well that almost all life forms you see around you reproduce this way. But trying to mix DNA when you are a plant is quite tricky. How on earth can two plants that can't move from place to place swap cells? Flowers are a stunning solution to the problem. They spread reproductive cells called pollen from one plant to another in many different ways. Some release them to be carried by the wind. Others attract creatures such as beetles, bees, and moths that move from place to place. Some even partner with a very particular creature. This is a two-way deal. Some beetles, bees, and moths need partners as much as the flowers need them. The insects eat some of the flower pollen and also drink a sugary liquid called nectar that the flower produces. While they're eating, the insects get the pollen all over themselves, so they carry it on their bodies from flower to flower. Everyone's a winner! That's why many flowers are so brightly colored. It's so they can attract insects. It's like a form of TV advertising saying, "Hey, look at me over here. I have a sugary drink, and guess what? It's free." But even after successfully swapping their DNA, plants still have a problem. Their seeds now must be spread out so young plants don't compete for vital nutrients and water like with their parents. Some seeds travel on the wind, such as the helicopter seeds, like a sycamore tree. Some by water, a coconut. And some by sticking to an animal's fur, a burr. But the most interesting method of all is to package seeds inside a tempting ready-made meal. That's the real purpose of all fruit, from strawberries and apples to peaches and even tomatoes. Fruits are nature's ready-made meals, designed by flowering plants. To tempt animals to eat them and spread their seeds. When they've been digested, the seeds inside are randomly scattered on the ground in the animal's dung. By the way, nothing is better for helping seeds grow than a shot of manure in the form of animal dung. It's another great example of natural teamwork in action. We are now roughly 100 million years from the present day. Let's see, that's about 11:29 p.m. on our 24-hour clock of Earth history. That leaves only 31 minutes to go. Any sign of humans yet? Actually, there's a hint of humans going on, even though it's still millions of years before any sign of our ancestors can be seen wandering across the grassy plains of Africa. Today, people live in vast towns and cities, some, like Tokyo in Japan, with more than 30 million people. But the idea of millions of the same animal species living close together first appeared long before humans. Welcome to the first insect cities. These are the giant communities of bees, ants, and termites. There are about 20,000 different types of bees alive today. Some, especially honeybees, form highly social groups. It's fascinating to see the similarities between beehives and human cities. Honeybees pass on knowledge from one generation to another. They care for their young, and sometimes they even sacrifice their lives for the group. Also, these little insects do different jobs, dividing what needs to be done among them. People have different jobs, as lorry drivers, computer programmers, and paleontologists, just to name a few. For a long time, biologists thought we were the only animals that divided work in this way. But, as any beekeeper will tell you, that is not so. Honeybees do it too. It's a good example of how things we assume happen only in the human world sometimes can be seen in the lives of other creatures in the natural world. Honeybees also communicate. They talk to each other through the language of dance. When a bee returns to the hive from gathering food, it tells the others where to look for more food by performing a certain type of dance. The round dance means the food's within 50 meters of the hive. The waggle dance provides details about the distance and the direction of the food. Then there's the jerky dance. This is used by the bees to decide whether to increase or decrease the amount of food gathering they need to do, depending on the hive's overall needs. Ants belong to the same insect group as honeybees. The oldest fossils of ants' nests date from about 100 million years ago. There are many similarities between ants' nests and honeybees' hives, but ants do not dance. Instead, they communicate through sound, touch, and smell. When an ant finds food, it will leave a trail of scent along the ground all the way home to lead others to its source. It finds its way back by remembering certain landmarks, often using the position of the sun as its guide. But the prize for the first insects to work out how to live together in giant groups goes to termites. Fossilized termite nests date back 220 million years. These tiny creatures create some of the biggest insect cities of all. They often live in colonies that number several million. A queen can lay thousands of eggs a day. She gets so large, sometimes up to 10 centimeters long, that she is often unable to move. If she needs more space, a team of worker termites heaves her up and pushes her to a newly built chamber.